Hey, good morning or afternoon to you. Whatever it is, wherever it is, however you are out there. Just waiting for the stream to start. Getting everything rolling. And we're live. Hey, good afternoon to you. How is everybody today? I hope you have had an absolutely relaxing and wonderful day off. If you're here in the United States, let's remember why we have that day off. That's very important. But anyway, how are you? I'm fine. Friday sucked. Friday sucked on toast. I don't want to go into it right now, but it wasn't. I didn't like it. I didn't like it much at all. But we do what we must. We continue on. But how are you guys? How's everybody out there doing? So today, hang on a second. Oh, Facebook stream wasn't started. Well, those folks can come along any minute. Today, actually, I want to talk about my favorite, or one of my favorite. No, I'll say it's my favorite. My favorite D&D module. I was looking at my videos last night, just kind of arranging things, rifling through them. And I noticed that of all the original content that I've created, not counting the Great Kingdom trailer or the Revco concert video, which technically belongs to Warner, I have actually got a video that is really, really popular. It is 7,500 views, which I think is pretty good. I mean, it's a few years old, but that's all right. And it's my video where I talk about Keep on the Borderlands. So I was very happy to see that something so near and dear to my heart was also popular with you guys and with passerbys, and the algorithm kind of churning it up there. Hey, if you liked this video, watch this video. And there's a lot of comments under it over the years that it's been up, so it's very nice. It's nice to see that. And so I thought, well, why not revisit it? Why not talk a little bit more about Keep on the Borderlands? And what do we mean by talk a little bit more about it? Well, I'll tell you. I have often told the story of how when I was a kid and I first started playing Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't fully embrace the idea of having a rule set separate from individual modules. Now, fortunately, Providence guided me to select B2 because it was for character levels 1 to 3. I put a lot of stock into character levels. Not really thinking, hey, you can just make a character that starts at 5th level and then run them through a 5th level module. But when I saw B2 shrink wrapped by itself, and yes, at the time, you could buy B2 as a standalone module. You didn't just have to get it in a copy of Holmes Dungeons and Dragons or Moldvay Basic D&D or whatever came later. It had some very attractive things on the cover, and not just the artwork and graphics, but I'll show you that there. Little shininess, nice magenta copy. Unfortunately, this is not my original copy. I wish I still had it, but I don't. But it said introductory module for character levels 1 to 3. Well, the introductory part, that immediately got me interested, because I was like, introductory, that's what I need. I need to start with an introduction. I mean, sure, I grokked D&D as far as understanding, it's a fantasy game, a first-person fantasy game, if you will, a shared narrative. But the rules were kind of not foremost in my mind. So I thought, hey, Here's a book that seems to have everything. It's an introductory module for character levels 1 to 3. Low level characters, introduction. Perfect. And so I will take you guys through the process of how, for the longest time, I actually used Keep on the Borderlands as the only D&D book I've got. Now, certain conceits we have are inevitable as far as understanding D&D now. But if you cast your mind back to 1981-82, I was not aware of these things that we now just kind of take for granted. So it was a little difficult for me to completely wrap my head around some of the concepts introduced in the module, well, in any module. And so let us take a look at that and dive in. And I will say very briefly, similarly, hello, good evening to you. It's been a good day. Yard work with my dad. Awesome. Always spend time with your folks, man, when you got the opportunity. Reading the Meta Barons by Yorodowski. Excellent material. Man, he's been a tough approach for me. I don't deny that the guy is a mad genius, but oof, that's a heck of a climb, if you will. And hello, Chris. Chris says, greetings, people of Earth. So I get Keep on the Borderlands. I purchased the module. I get it home. And I set about learning Dungeons & Dragons as much as I can through this module. Now this happens, this copy I picked up at a used bookstore because I had to have a copy of B2, man. And later I got this autographed by Gary at Milwaukee Game Fest. That gives it extra DMing power. So I get it and I open up the cover and man, just look at that map. That is gorgeous. Who doesn't know and love this map? And I think it's telling, and I've said this before, but I think it's telling that the playtest module that they included with the 5th edition playtest was Keep on the Borderlands. Now, it wasn't what they put in the box set, and I think they missed, or the introductory set, and I think they missed a huge opportunity. That absolutely should have been the pack-in module, but whatever. Ain't my D&D, pal. So we have the opening blurb here. This module includes a cover folder with map and a complete description booklet to form a ready-made scenario for basic Dungeons & Dragons. It has been specifically designed for use by beginning dungeon masters so they may begin play with a minimum of preparations. Well, that just spoke to me right there. With minor modifications, it is also suitable for use with advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Now we were talking, I was like, hey, this'll lead me into AD&D also. Within are many features to aid novice players and dungeon masters, legends, history, and background information, a list of adventuring characters, tips on how to be an effective dungeon master, plus an interesting area for characters to base themselves in, the Keep, before setting out to explore the Caves of Chaos. Well, by God, I'm sold. Clearly I made the right choice. So I dove into it. We have notes for the Dungeon Master. It explains how the shorthand for character notation, I guess they call it stat blocks today. It was really just stat lines back in the day. And so on. And one thing that I thought was amusing when I was a kid, it says, under the introduction, Dungeon Master, if many copies of this module are available to the players, you may wish to alter sections of the Keep and Caves of Chaos. If you do this, You will be sure to have new surprises for players who might be familiar with some of the contents of the module. You are not entering the world in the usual manner, for you are setting forth to be a dungeon master. Certainly there are stout fighters, mighty magic users, wily thieves, and courageous clerics who will make their mark in the magical lands of D&D. You, however, are above even the greatest of these, for as DM, you are to become the shaper of the cosmos. It is you who will give form and content to all the universe. You will breathe life into the stillness, giving meaning and purpose to all the actions which are to follow. The others in your group will assume the roles of individuals and play their parts, but each can only perform within the bounds you will set. It is now up to you to create a magical realm filled with danger, mystery, and excitement, complete with countless challenges. Though your role is the greatest, it is also the most difficult. You must now prepare to become all things to all people. And that was when the mantle, that was when the burden of leadership was laid heavy on my shoulders. And today, 41 years later, I am still DMing almost exclusively, thanks to that paragraph. But to get into the nuts and bolts and what helped me, and how this module, despite not having all the rules, had enough rules to allow me to help. On page 2, on the right-hand column, it explains, again, the shorthand. Dexterity equals DX, armor class equals AC, level LVL, hit dice, HD, hit points, HP, number of attacks equals number sign AT, damage equals D. Note that the term hit dice applies only to monsters, while the term level is used to refer to level of experience. And then there's some examples given are Taverner, Dex 13, Armor Class 9, Level 0, Hit Point 6, Guard, Dex 14, AC 4, Level 1, HP 7, Number of Attacks 1/2, Damage 1 to 6. And I can presume that 1/2 means every other round he gets an attack. Although at the time, I think that kind of confused me and I wondered if it was a typo. But immediately starting on page 3 was my succor, my understanding. Determining armor class. And then we have, it starts at 9. This was prior to AD&D's armor class 10. Remember, J. Eric Holmes was working from his own interpretation of Basic and original Dungeons and Dragons. And so the module is geared towards that. Even though Gary wrote this, Gary took, I think he said he took like 6 weeks. Or it may have only been 2, I don't remember, but this doesn't feel like a 2-week project. Off in the writing of the G series to pen this particular module. But it lists armor class, 9 being none and 1 being plate mail and magic, +1 shield, or other combinations. And then note that an armor class of less than 2 is possible for characters wearing magic armor, carrying a magic shield, and or wearing a ring of protection. Players using these items will subtract bonuses from their AC. For example, a fighter using both +1 plate mail and +1 shield would have an armor class of 0. Chris says the only thing that could have made B2 any better would have been an official hex location in the World of Greyhawk's box set. Otherwise, it's nearly flawless. Gary places the module in the Pomarge. An actual hex number would have been nice, but yes, this module is ostensibly set in the Pomarge. Late TSR, when they released, I almost said Wizards of the Coast, but late TSR released a Return to the Keep on the Borderlands that does place it in Greyhawk, but it's not in the Pomarge. So take Gary's word on that. Now, the next part was what really, really empowered me, and that was a section after armor class using the combat tables. And again, it's so essential that I got this module, that I didn't get Village of Hamlet. That was a low level module, right? Or Secret of the Slaver's Stockade. I mean, that's kind of a low-ish level module. But no, I got this one. And thank goodness I got this one. Rich over on Facebook says, I left my heart in the Pomage. Yeah, on a silver platter on an altar of evil. But anyway, so using the combat tables, it says, to find the die roll needed to hit any armor class, look at the charts on pages 18 and 19 of the basic D&D rulebook. Now we're into troubled waters, because I said, well, this is the basic D&D rulebook. Let's look on page 18 and 19. Well, this is all encounter areas. Did I make some mistake? This just has monster encounters. Okay. But let's go back. Now I'm starting to feel a bit of unease. I'm starting to wonder, uh-oh, did I get the wrong book? Compare the level if a character, or hit dice if a monster, with the armor class of the target to find the number needed to hit. For armor classes lower than 2, adjust the number upwards. A character needing a roll of 7 to hit armor class 2 would need an 18 to hit armor class 1, a 19 to hit armor class 0, and so on. Unless magic or silver weapons are needed to cause damage and not available, a roll of 20 will always hit and a roll of 1 will always miss. A bonus of +1 should be added to the 2-hit die roll of high-level characters, for they have more training and experience in fighting. This bonus applies to fighter of 4th level or above, to clerics and thieves of 5th level or above, and to magic users of 6th level or above. So there's no combat chart on page 18 or 19 of this introductory module that I've got here. What gives, Gary? And next up, movement in combat. And there's an explanation of movement in combat. I'll just touch on it briefly. Combat movement is short and swift and usually done by sprinting. In a combat situation, only short charges or retreats are allowed. After combat is resolved, movement rates return to normal. The movement speed for characters is, and then it lists unarmored, unencumbered, 20 feet per melee round. Armored or encumbered, 10 feet. Armored and encumbered, 5 feet per melee round. To determine a monster's movement speed in combat, divide its base movement speed by 12. After that, we have a little section, let's see. When dice are used to randomly determine a number, the type of dice are abbreviated D number sign. D4 means a 4-sided die, D6 a 6-sided die. If more than one is rolled, the number required is placed before the D. 2d6 means 2 6-sided die. If any number can be added to the total of the dice, it is indicated afterwards. D4 plus 2 means to roll a 4-sided die and add 2 to the total. 2d8 plus 1 will give a number from 3 to 17. You will quickly get to know all of these abbreviations and may use them when you design your own dungeons. So, right there in less than an entire column page are some serious essentials to understanding D&D. Even though I didn't have a rule book, and if you didn't have a rule book, if you just go grab a PDF of Keep on the Borderlands real quick and look at it, and even mentally setting aside your conceits, what you know about D&D, so far, in the space of probably a grand total of 1 column, you've got a lot to go with. Now we get into some more DMing advice, and probably one of the best pieces written about DMing, how to be an effective dungeon master, over on page 4. And I'm gonna read the first paragraph to just kind of give you guys the thesis, and then we'll get to more gray areas, more foggy areas that kind of tripped me up. As a dungeon master, the beginner is faced with a difficult problem. The DM is the most important person in the D&D game. He or she sets up and controls all situations, makes decisions, and acts as the link between the players and the world he or she has created. Perhaps the most common question faced by a beginning dungeon master is, what do I do to run a game? That's where I found myself that spring, I think, possibly back in 1981 or 82. It is possible to read through the rules and become slightly lost by all of the things that must be prepared or known before DMing a game. So there's 6 solid paragraphs there. You should have a copy of Keep on the Borderlands just for that section alone. If you've been DMing as long as I have, or even longer, sometimes you gotta come back and you gotta reread that. It's rejuvenating. It's drinking from the fountain of youth again. Legends of Wargaming saying something. Okay. Are you saying something? All right. And then there's a section on time, which I thought I can keep track of time. I don't need a stopwatch at the table. Here was the part that really let me know I was kind of a little too quick to grab the first book that I saw. Dividing treasure and computing experience. And now we get into the Bill just had to make shit up. After the party exits the dungeon safely, all surviving player characters should divide treasure and be awarded their experience points. Division of treasure is in the player's responsibility. Awarding experience points is the dungeon master's responsibility. Ideally, treasure should be divided equally among surviving player characters, with the henchmen and hireling usually given an equal share, minus any advance payment. Magical items are generally given only to character classes that can use them. For example, a fighter should take in a magical sword as part of his or her share in preference to a scroll. And then it goes on, and it gives an example of a party consisting of a fighter, a magic user, and a hireling, all first level, arrives safely back at the keep. The recovered treasure equals 520 gold pieces, 1,000 silver pieces, a necklace worth 400 gold pieces, a +1 sword, and a ring of water walking. The total value of all non-magical treasure is 1,020 gold pieces. Without selling the necklace, it would be impossible for the party to split the treasure equally. The 2-player characters compromise by giving the necklace to the hireling to ensure his loyalty with a greater share of treasure. They take only 310 gold pieces, but the magic user keeps the ring and the fighter keeps the sword. Yada yada yada. And then at the bottom of the next paragraph, experience points for monsters overcome or killed is calculated by using the experience points for monsters overcome chart on page 11 of the basic Dungeons & Dragons rulebook. Ah, okay, that's how you award experience points. Let's look over on page 11. I still wasn't getting into this point, guys. Have mercy on me. I was 11. 9. 11 is a description of a bunch of stuff in the keep. I have clearly not purchased a rule book. Well, what to do? I wasn't going to pester my parents for another $10 for a D&D rule book. This and some dice, and I think I got some miniatures that day too. A Grenadier paint and take set was a small fortune at the time. But I told him this was what I needed, and I certainly wasn't going to ask him to drive me back to the toy store. So I soldiered on, and I said, well, I'll just have to cope somehow. So armed with that information, or lack thereof, I pressed on and I began to read the module and put my own mark on the personae in the keep and in the caves. I've always placed the keep on the border of the Shieldlands and Horn Society near Critwall. That's a place you could do it. That's from Legends of Wargaming over on YouTube for anybody who's listening on Facebook. So there I was, armed with that information and a feeling that I had messed up. Two things came to my savior. First, when determining what characters should do, how characters should be created, what players should do. On the very back page of the module itself is a tablet that says additional non-player characters. And there's a table. And on this table, I'm not sure if that will show very well. I think it's just completely desaturated. It says, use this sheet to list persons in the keep and or in the caves of chaos. Profession should be fighter, innkeeper, and so forth. Special refers to spells, valuables, and other details you may wish to include. Location should be noted by building or cave number. Okay. Name, class, profession, level. Armor class, hit points. Now we get to... Oh, that's right. Hey, Paul. Now we get to the section of critical importance. I knew from talking to kids in elementary school that there were 6 character stats: strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, and charisma, and that they ranged from 3 to 18. And here they were listed out on these mini character blocks. I did not know how to generate a number from 3 to 18 with the dice that I had. Again, I was 11, get off my back. However, a D20 encompasses a range from 3 to 18. Ignoring 1s or 2s, or 19s or 20s, you can generate a number from 3 to 18 on a D20. The curve is completely flat, but you can do it. So that's what I did. When players generated characters, I simply had them ignore 1s and 2s and 19s and 20s. And yes, I did have players. I did have a player group. Tommy Miner from a few apartments up the block, and my sister, Beth. And so we generated characters. Now, this was the first saving grace because I had character sheets, as it were. The next one, God bless Gary Gygax, was right here in the middle of the module. And I hope you can see that because it's very important. Because right here, on 2 pull-out pages, is about 40% of what you need to know mechanically to run a D&D game, a basic D&D game. Because we have a list of magic user spells, not described, and I'll get into that in a minute. A list of clerical spells, again, no descriptions. Cost of equipment and weapons, and saving throw tables, all right here on the front page. Most of these spells were kind of self-explanatory when I looked them over when I was a kid. Charm person, you really impressed somebody. Dancing lights, didn't really know. I just figured you cast some lights and they bobbed around you like torches. It wasn't wrong. Detect magic, well, that's kind of self-explanatory. Enlargements, and it is listed as enlargements with an S. I don't know if that's a typo or if it was slightly different in Home Basic, but enlargements. Hold portal. I figured it would keep doors open as you were going through, like a convenient invisible doorman. Light. Well, if dancing light was a bunch of little lights that floated around you, light was just a big, just light up a room. Magic missile. Now, I understood magic missile. Kids in school had explained magic missile to me. A little ball, like a little bullet, you just zap somebody with. Protection from evil, self-explanatory. Read languages, read magic. Shield. I thought, well, it brings up a shield, like in Star Trek. Just, you just stop monsters from attacking you. Sleep. Again, you can knock a monster to sleep. I didn't know it was an area effect, or as I like to call sleep, the low-level magic user's fireball spell. Tensor's floating disc. I remember specifically asking what that one was, and it was explained to me. Ventriloquism seemed kind of silly, but yeah. Audible glamour, no idea. Knew what audible meant, glamour, just no clue. Continual light. Darkness, detect evil, detect invisible. ESP, mind reading spell, invisibility. Knock. I just assumed that like you could like use it at range to pound on a door and fool monsters into thinking somebody was right outside it. Paul just said something very funny on YouTube that I have to address. 10 arrows plus 1. Why don't they just say 11 arrows? That may have been me, Paul. And I think I understood the plus 1. It is more related to hit dice. Like this monster is 1+1 hit dice. This monster has 2 hit dice. There you go. That was a tough DM. But locate object, I figured I got pretty close with locate object. If you lost something, you could find it. Magic mouth, again, I knew what magic mouth was, had it explained to me. Mirror image would just like summon an identical copy to fight with you while you were in the dungeon. No idea about phantasmal forces. Pyrotechnics. You pointed at something and it caught on fire. Ray of enfeeblement. It just like it reduced somebody to stupidity, which was a bit more like feeble mind. Strength. I remember strength throwing me because I was like, it's a stat. What would it do? Web. Web was like a Spider-Man kind of thing. Wizard lock. This meant you could lock something forever and only you could open it. So I was close with that one. But it goes on, and there's like nothing covered in this module other than chaos and law and so on. It doesn't go into the mechanics of alignment. So when I got over, for example, to no alignment under clerics, I was like, alignment. Well, I've worked on cars with my dad. I know what alignment means in that context, but this game doesn't have cars. Maybe it has something to do with determining like how sound the structure of a building is, or all the stones and bricks that make it up correctly placed. But on the next page, this was the real Mamma Jamma. This next page enabled me to run Dungeons and Dragons. We have clerics versus undead for turning. And again, I was fortunate in that someone explained turning to me. And then we have, on the bottom half of this page, the attack charts. For character levels 1 to 3 or normal men, and monsters all the way up to 11 hit dice. So in 2 pages, I have spells for clerics and magic users, saving throws, cost of weapons and equipment, so players could buy things. I was very generous. I think I gave players like 1,000 gold pieces or something like that as a pool to shop with. So my sister and Tommy, 500 gold pieces apiece. But we also have die roll for monsters to score a hit. Again, 11 hit dice. So you're going to be throwing an 11 hit die monster. So I knew how to roughly generate characters. I had 2 hit tables. Now I didn't understand as far as magic users. I figured a first level magic user could cast any spell he needed any time from the first level list. I was very generous with magic users too. Same with clerics. And how I sussed out combat, because even though damage was listed, I wasn't really quite grokking everything. So what I did with combat was, if a monster attacked a player and hit successfully according to the chart, the player took a point of damage. If a player attacked a monster and hit successfully according to the chart, monster was dead. And I would basically just tally up and say, well, you guys got this far on the map, so I guess you're all on second level now. Or you got, this far on the map, so you're all third level now, and so on. I didn't tie it to the actual physical dungeon level they were going on. I knew the distinction between level underground and level of character. But that was it. With little understanding of spells, no understanding of how the magic system worked, but a fairly decent working understanding of how the combat system worked, I had I had enough to play the game. That's how, for about a year, I played Dungeons and Dragons. Now, it wasn't for a huge number of sessions. I think maybe 6 or 7 total. So less than 1 every month. But that was it. That was everything I needed to know. Oh, the other thing I did was I put the map out on the table and helpfully pointed out things to the players. So in the Kobold Cave, the Kobold Cave is famous for, you got a 30-foot path inward, and then it splits off to the east and the west. And right at that T-junction, there's a pit trap. I'd say, look out, guys, there's a pit trap right there. Watch out for that. Here's a secret door over, let me see, where is it? Where is it? It's between 2 of the monster layers. So the monster chieftains can meet up, like the hobgoblins and the orcs, or the 2 orc tribes or something. I'm trying to remember where it's at. We'll just do this one. Over at the Minotaur lair, I'd say, oh, there's a secret door. So you can go through that secret door if you want. So, on the one hand, I gave. On the other hand, I took away. But in my naivety, that's how I did it. That's how I ran Dungeons and Dragons with just this module. Now, if this had had, say, 4 more pages in it to describe, first of all, a paragraph saying here's how you generate characters, 3d6, strength, intelligence, wisdom, dexterity, constitution, charisma, outline the classes a bit more, and explain, like, just like, for the monsters in here, here's their XP values, and here's a table of how many XP characters need to advance, and then devote the rest to spell descriptions. Say, heck, I would say you could probably do it in 2 pages, dedicating just a couple lines. This would have been an entirely complete, self-contained D&D game, all in one. $5.99 or $2.99 or whatever it was at the time, and you would have had everything you needed to run D&D without the dice. Wouldn't have even needed an introductory set. But that's kind of an interesting philosophical question. Would it have then been rules with an example, a really big example dungeon in it, or an introductory module with introductory rules? I kind of wish that it had had those things in there to forestill any doubts, any concerns that I had about how to how to run certain aspects of the game. But even though it didn't, I was still able to run D&D with this. And this gets to, pardon me for a second, it's very dusty in my office. I'll explain that. But there is enough there that you can do it, that you can get away with it. Honestly, I think that even TSR under Gary, I think they missed a huge opportunity to make the game even more accessible. I mean, imagine buying the book, just the book by itself, just this, as your hook. Not an introductory set, but literally just that. Put a blurb on it, contains all the rules you need to play basic Dungeons and Dragons. Just pare it down and limit it, the spell descriptions and so on, and then everything you need would be right there. I don't begrudge the fact that it wasn't there, because by God, I had fun with this module. And every base assumption of mine, as far as characters taking 1 point of damage when they get hit by a monster, or killing a monster when they hit it. I mean, none of that. When I found out later, when I finally got a set of the basic D&D rules, the Tom Moldvay set, like, I didn't feel bad. I didn't like, oh man, I did it wrong for so long, or go apologize to my player. I said, oh, okay, all right, this is clear. All right, let's move on. And then I think the next D&D book I owned, actually, even before I got the Moldvay rules, was a copy of the Monster Manual, and that threw me for a loop. Because, here were demons and devils and dragons and beholders and just all of these monsters and complex alignments. And when I saw alignment listed in the Monster Manual, that's when alignment clicked for me. Oh, a spell where you can know what the monster is. Alignment, right, got it. So the Monster Manual, if nothing else, helped me understand how the spell No Alignment works. And I was very happy about that. But, yeah, I picked up my set of Moldvay rules the next year, maybe, after I had my Monster Manual. Or not, yeah, the Mulvey rules. I got them at TGY. I don't know if where you are in the world if you had TG and Y, but it was a fantastic discount retail store. Loved it. Got a lot of cool stuff at TG and Y when I was a kid, man. Model kits, uh, D&D stuff, video games, paperback books, many of which I still have. Um, just as an aside, it was interesting. TGY was high end enough. I said it was discount, but it was really. It kind of occupied a similar space to Kmart and Zayre's, if you're familiar with them. And I remember TG&Y had a massive computer department that was just Atari. Atari had gotten the contract, and in true 1980s fashion, they had like these brown carpeted electronic shelves off in the corner of the shop, and these huge molded chrome and glass and black painted chipboard, high gloss covered with black linoleum or whatever, Atari Computer Corporation. And that almost sold me on becoming an Atari user, because one of the guys that worked there, who actually became a friend of my sister's, and he would always type in quick demo programs on the Atari 400 or 800 that they had. The 800, as I recall, was broken a lot of the time, just because people would abuse it, because, hey, it's not mine, right? But he would type in stuff on the Atari 400 and, little programs to like cycle colors and so on, or play sounds. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I didn't even have a computer at the time. But, and they had the 2600 kiosk that was like an arcade game, like a gargantuan oversized arcade game. And you could select one of 25 or 30 Atari games and play it for 90 seconds before it would recycle. Mechanus, I'm sorry, am I saying that right? Mechanus X. Everything you're describing is what I went through trying to learn AD&D back in the mid 80s. Except I inherited all my books from my uncle. Well, you've got a hell of a cool uncle who gave you all his books, but at least you had all of the rules. at least you had all of the rules. But as far as I knew, aside from a couple of hiccups, I had all the rules too, and I made it work. You can work with just about anything and make a situation work for you. So that's how I did it. So when I say that the first D&D book I had, and the only book I had for a year, was Keep on the Borderlands, that's what I mean. And you can do it, even if you set aside your conceits and your foreknowledge about D&D. Now, I had a little bit of help from, again, people I went to elementary school with, fellow classmates, explained a few things to me about how the game works. Without that, could I have figured it out? Probably, with a little less understanding, but I probably could have figured it out. I'm a pretty clever kid. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I mean, there's no like larger story of getting my ass kicked by my two players when they realized that I wasn't running the rules right. I think my cousin David played with us once or twice too. So there you have it. And I guess if there's a point to this story, it is that you don't need tons of rules. I mean, I see people with, the Pathfinder core rulebook is like 2 inches thick. And then there's monster books, and then there's a player's handbook or whatever. And Pathfinder literally, like the last time I was at a physical Gary Con, there were a couple of booths. One was selling Pathfinder books by weight. Not by cover price, by weight. Like, oh, how many pounds of Pathfinder books have you got there? Now, unless those people drove to the con, I pity them getting home with them, trying to fit those into carry-on. Woof. And another was selling Pathfinder by the foot. If you had told me, hey, D&D rules will sell by the foot, I would have been like, huh? Oh, another interesting thing about that TG&Y, that's also where I bought my first Dungeon Master's Guide at. I saw it over, it wasn't in the toy department, and it wasn't in like the book racks. They had a book department, like multiple shelves of books you could buy in TG&Y. It was over on the periodicals rack, and it was $15. And my sister at that time, she had gotten a job at TG&Y, and she was able to use her discount. $15 was still a princely sum in 84, 83 or whatever. So that's also where I got my Dungeon Master's Guide. It's where I got my copy of Deities and Demigods. I bought that there. That was fun. And that was a hoot. I still love Deities and Demigods. It's still a great book. Yeah, that's really all I have to say on the topic. I hope, having explained that now, you guys you guys enjoyed hearing that as much as I did telling it. Get yourself a copy of Keep on the Borderlands. There is still solid information for DMing in that module, without a doubt. Gary's advice to new DMs. What is it? How to be an effective dungeon master. I mean, it's not quite a full column, but I'm just gonna read here, although I am gonna comment on Paul's comment. Pathfinder books by weight reminds me of that Simpsons episode where they visit that .com startup and they hand out stock on a toilet paper roll. Yeah, that's spot on. Here's a great section from that. As a judge, moderator, or referee, the DM must constantly deal with the players. Just as a referee at a sporting event, the DM must be fair. He or she cannot be out to get the players, nor should he or she be on their side all the time. The DM must be neutral. If a party has played well and succeeded, the DM should not punish them by sending more and more monsters at them or thwart their plans. On the other hand, if the players have acted foolishly, they should get their, quote, just rewards, unquote. In combat, the DM should play the monsters to the best of the monster's ability. If the creature is stupid, it may be easily tricked or may not always do the smartest thing. If the monster is clever or intelligent, it will fight to its best advantage. The DM must be fair, but the players must play wisely. Now that's an interesting statement by Gary, not out to get the players. That was one of the stark differences I noticed when I got into AD&D, because in the Dungeon Master's Guide, you are very much out to get the players. But I think a lot of bargaining DMs ignored that admonition to not be out to get the players, and so you wind up, unfortunately, with a situation that gave rise to 3E and to the edition that followed third and so on, where it just became players sticking their hands out and saying gimme, gimme, gimme all the time. Because there were a lot of killer DMs out there that would gleefully send a second or third level party into the Tomb of Horrors when it was new and unknown to the players, and cackle as they fell into 100-foot deep spiked pits, the impact alone killing their characters, or jumping, lining up in a row and walking into the sphere of annihilation, or if by some dint they managed to open the door that leads into the little maze full of magic missile traps, they get blasted to smithereens by those, or make it to the four-armed gargoyle who then eats them, etc., etc., etc. You get the point. But there's a lot of good stuff in B2. Not just DM advice. But here's my challenge to you guys. The next time you have a group, the next time you've drummed up a group of players ready to play, I want to hear back from you, because I want to know if you did this. I want you to keep on the Borderlands, set aside don't even have other books on the table, and try to put aside as many of the, well, I know this and I know that conceits, and see if you can do it. Level advancement, I'll give you a break. You can use the leveling advancement and individual weapon damage versus kill a monster or ow, I took a point. Those two things, but just use keep on the Borderlands. I would be willing to bet you, if you're a DM and you're worth your salt, you can do that without consulting any other rules and without leaning on any preconceived conceits and notions. Yes, you'll know what certain spells do, good for you, and the XP thing and the damage. But with just those three elements, can you run a successful Keep on the Borderlands campaign? I bet you can. I think there's enough stuff in there to do it. Now, if you're playing 3rd edition or a later edition, you may say, oh, but I've got to adjust everything. So maybe I'm just talking to my fellow 1E and old school fans. But just roll in, just show up with Keep on the Borderlands and say, this is what we're playing. Keep on the Borderlands as the D&D game. Try it. I think you'll find that you can do it successfully, and you'll have a hell of a lot of fun doing it. Unfettered from tomes and volumes and booklets and magazines and notes. Everything right there. Try it. You'll like it. And with that said, I'm going to leave you guys to your challenge. Come back someday and let me know whether or not it worked for you. Now tomorrow we're going to be back in the paint lab, and I'll be continuing on with the hirelings and the henchmen. I'll find some cockamamie BS to talk about. Tonight we're playing AD&D. Characters are going back into my Castle Greyhawk, so we'll have that to talk about tomorrow. Hopefully introducing a new player tonight. We'll see. Good friend of mine might be joining us, but I will leave you guys with this. Have an absolutely fantastic day. Being the day it is, Memorial Day, maybe pause and reflect a little bit and be thankful for having the day. And I'll see y'all tomorrow. I love you. I mean that. Take care. Peace.